Second referral Norfolk Police has made to the IOPC after officers attended the same address last month as part of a missing persons inquiry. A speech by the Shadow Foreign Secretary calling for a ceasefire in Gaza has been interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. David Lammy had to make a quick exit when an activist from the Free Palestine Coalition jumped onto the stage and called for him to condemn what she called genocide in Gaza. Several others disrupted the speech in London, verbally attacking Labour's stance on the conflict. Mr Lammy went on to express support for the creation of a Palestinian state when the war ends and called for a sustainable ceasefire.
The situation in Gaza is intolerable and unbearable. Too many children, women, old people have lost their lives. We need a truce now so that humanitarian aid can get in. We need a sustainable ceasefire. I'm hugely worried about what I'm hearing from UK aid agencies and from the United Nations and the medical attention that over 60,000 people who are now wounded or maimed need. We must get urgent aid in.
An investigation is looking into how two British warships collided at a port in Bahrain. Footage on social media shows HMS Chiddingfold reversing into HMS Bangor. The two minesweepers are a part of the UK's long-standing commitment to protect merchant shipping in the region. Trade through the Red Sea has been disrupted by an upsurge in attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels recently. Mouthwash, tea bags and sausages are amongst the supermarket staples that have been downsized because of so-called shrinkflation. The consumer watchdog, which says shoppers are often paying more for less as manufacturers look to cut costs. They found a Listerine mouthwash shrank by 100 millilitres despite its price in Tesco going up by 52 pence. That's 21% more for 17% less. Meanwhile, some varieties of PG Tips used to contain 180 tea bags. Now, at many supermarkets, you'll get just 140. And heavy rain and winds of up to 80 miles an hour are set to batter parts of Britain tomorrow. A number of amber warnings for wind will be in place from Sunday night into Monday as Storm Isha threatens a risk to life and damage to buildings. Railway lines across Scotland will close early at around 7 p.m. That's tomorrow. East Midlands Railway says it expects significant disruption on Sunday and Monday. Well, this is GB News. We're live on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. That's it for the moment. Now back to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight on GB News, your perfect Saturday night in. In my big opinion, the sickening sex book being handed to 8-year-old children. I'll be unearthing this shocking scandal in just a moment's time. In the big story, as Gary Lineker tells The Guardian, he's been the victim of serious online threats. Is the BBC star being treated unfairly just for having an opinion? I'll be asking legendary dancer and BBC regular Wayne Sleep. My Mark Meets guest is the survivor of the Andes air crash in 1972, where the crash victims resorted to cannibalism to get out alive while struggling in sub-zero conditions. The story is now a smash hit film on Netflix, and the remarkable survivor Gustavo Zerbino joins me live to tell his story. In my Take at 10, why isn't Prince Harry by his father's side as he gets treatment in hospital? Harry hasn't just lost a court case this week, he's lost the plot. I'll be dealing with the wayward Windsor in no uncertain terms at 10. Also tonight, is Donald Trump now unstoppable? And as the Princess of Wales languishes in hospital, how worried should we be about the health of our future Queen? And should the remarkable Princess Anne step forward with a more senior role amid this royal staffing crisis? I'll be asking the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. We've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 sharp, with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say, who don't follow the rules and don't follow the script. Tonight, Rebecca Jane, Mike Green and Neil Wallace. Now, I'll be catching up with Rebecca before the end of the show because she has announced her shock departure as Deputy Leader of UKIP. What's going on and what is the future for that party? Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come. We start with my big opinion. This is progress, is it? A shockingly graphic sex book, appropriate to read from the age of 8, according to one of the authors. Well, it's been slammed by concerned parents over its vivid illustrations of sex, self-pleasure and swapping your gender. If the kids are listening in biology class, they'll know that that's scientifically impossible. But hey, I'm old-fashioned like that. Who needs facts when you've got an insane ideology to sell? This mucky new book, Welcome to Sex, which I'm not even sure I'd want teenagers to see, was released in the UK this month and has raised concerns not just over its salacious content, but the safeguarding risks that it poses to small children. This book is now on sale everywhere, including on Amazon and even at your local WH Smith, who I thought were there to sell rulers, fountain pens and gigantic Yorkie bars. Well, now they're selling filth to small children. Let me give you a little detail on this book. But before we do that, can I just say that if there are children 13 or younger listening or watching now, maybe now's a good moment to send them out of the room. This show is always family friendly and they'll be welcome back in 5 minutes' time. But it's important that you know about this shameful tome. It's being described as a no silly questions guide to sexuality, pleasure and figuring it out. Let me remind you, this is aimed at children. The only thing that kids should be figuring out is how many hula hoops they can put on their fingers and whether the Lego fire station they've built is about to collapse. But the authors would rather offer 8-year-olds a guide to oral sex, an explanation of how 2 penis owners can have anal sex, and borderline pornographic cartoon drawings of 2 women scissoring, which even if the kids have left the room, I really don't fancy explaining. There's also a nice bit of trans ideology thrown in there too, perpetuating the mythical and, in my view, dangerous idea that you've been born in the wrong body. That's a lie. That's medically impossible, but it doesn't stop the authors discussing gender identity labels such as gender fluid, trans, and wait for it, brother boy, an Aboriginal who was presented as female at birth but is a male spirit. Make it make sense. One of the co-authors said a mature 8-year-old could flick through it. Probably true, and suffer psychological damage as a result. Now, Tanya Carter, a spokeswoman for the Safe Schools Alliance, slammed the book as alarming. She said, why doesn't safeguarding apply to books? 8-year-olds need accurate information about puberty, but that's not what this book is. I completely agree. I think this utter tripe borders on grooming. It's normalising sex for very small children. I find it creepy, I find it sordid, I find it morally wrong, I find it damaging, I find it sick, and I find it perverted. And sadly, this kind of filth is not unusual, it's not surprising, it's not new. We've had to put up with hypersexualised drag acts, pumping and gyrating and wagging their backside around in front of toddlers. Canada witnessed the spectacle of a woodwork teacher, obviously male, wearing gigantic, enormous prosthetic breasts. If you don't think that he's getting a sexual kick out of making his pupils look at that rack of his, then you need to get out more. Look, for God's sakes, I don't believe in banning books or burning them in the streets, but what is clear is that certain books should not be in the hands of small kids. We're there to protect them, to protect their innocence, to protect their childhood, and to be frank, to protect their bodies too. If an 8-year-old is presented with these graphic images, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to think about those images, try to process and understand them, try them out even. The mind boggles. All of this is in the woke playbook, of course. It's a war on gender, a war on biology, and the sinister sexualisation of children. Some of the hardcore woke extremists like to describe paedophiles as minor attracted adults. You heard me right. Now, this book doesn't go there, of course it doesn't, but all of this dark stuff is on a spectrum. And I'd say that introducing 8-year-olds to the 69 position, lube and scissoring, whatever the hell that is problematic in the extreme. Is giving this book to a young child abuse? Well, you tell me. The world should be a safe and innocent place for children, and kids' books should be packed full of entertainment and information. And whilst many words should be in an 8-year-old's vocabulary, sex is not one of them. OK, folks, your reaction, mark@gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails shortly, but let's hear from my top pundits tonight. Former Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, top entrepreneur and star of Channel 4's Secret Millionaire, Mike Green, and the former Executive Editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Let me start with you, Neil. Your reaction to the news that small children can get a copy of this book in WH Smith.
Can I just say, this is a significantly exclusive story by GB News. Congratulations to them on breaking this. When I was a newspaper editor, when I was at The Sun, News of the World, People, this is the sort of story we sought to break because they're important stories, because parents who read newspapers, who are watching this programme, grandparents, know the madness of this sort of stuff. You've seen the book jacket. It is done just like a child's fun book, one that my 7-year-old grandchild is probably reading tonight. Very similar and presented in that way. And let me tell you, this is not material that should be available in any way to a young child. This is on the bookshelves in WH Smith. My kids wander around WH Smith picking things up, because that's what we want them to do. We want them to be curious. And they open this book, and done in the most fun way possible, is graphic and, I would argue, perverted, on occasion, sexual acts. And that is simply not right. As anybody who's got children would know, our job is to protect our children. And heaven help these people who wrote this book if they think that is right for a child of young age to be exposed to. It's simply wrong.
And Neil, for you to congratulate GB News on an exclusive is high praise, given the number of massive stories that you've broken in a long career in journalism. And well done to Dan and the team at the GB News website for breaking this story. Do head to our website and check out all the brilliant stories we've got at gbnews.com. But Mike Green, the authors and publishers of this book, might reasonably argue that 8-year-olds are not being targeted to read the book. They said, well, that would be a mature 8-year-old. They're looking at sort of 10 to 15-year-olds, and they'd like those kids to have the correct information so they can be safe rather than learning it from the internet. So they'd argue this book is much better for child safeguarding than any other source.
Yeah, look, I agree with Neil, Mark, and it's vile, it's filthy. I believe that all children, as they get to the stage, as they reach puberty, as they ask questions, parents should be the people who answer those questions, help them understand those issues. But this goes into graphic detail about how to use your tongue when rimming and things like that. It's things that make an adult feel sick, let alone a child that doesn't understand why they should do that. Would they think that they might be supposed to do that? This should be on the high, even if it is for sale. I don't think it should be, but if it was, it should be on the highest shelves of a bookshop with a black cover over it, not in the reach of children. Just let children be children. And I would be appalled to think any 8, 9, 10, even 13, 14-year-old would be getting their hands on this. Why do they need to learn it at this age? If it's illegal in the UK to have sex before 16, why are we telling people about the extremes of sexual pleasure, the extremes of sexual deviation in some cases? This book wouldn't be out of place as a playbook for Epstein Island. It's disgusting and I abhor it.
OK, if you don't know what rimming is, whatever you do, don't Google it. I wouldn't recommend that. Rebecca Jane, you've got children yourself. The authors, the publishers would argue that actually there's a lot of misinformation out there about sex and that younger children are exploring their bodies and perhaps having mini relationships. It's better that they've got the facts.
No, this book is disgusting. It's crass. And whoever the authors and the publishing houses need boycotting. Look at the design of the book. They're saying about, 13, 14, rubbish. The design of that book is so young in its design. It is designed at children aged 8 to 10. Yes, I have a daughter who's 11. I actually, when I saw it, I was like, oh, cracky, I'm not sure I want her in the green room at the minute. Because this is disgusting. And do you know what's going to happen? Kids are going to read that, they're going to see it, and the first thing they're going to do is, let's try it out, because it's put in their minds. This is woke nonsense, once again, jazzed up as basically just sexualising our children.
OK, well, listen, folks, my pundits are not sitting on the fence. What's your view? mark@gbnews.com. Don't forget now, it's just 40 minutes until my Take at 10, in which I'll be dealing with the wayward Windsor Prince Harry, who this week has not just lost a court case, he's lost the plot. That's Harry at 10. But should we deal with another challenging individual next in the big story, as Gary Lineker tells The Guardian that he's been the victim of serious online threats? Is the BBC star being treated unfairly just for having an opinion? I'll be asking legendary dancer and BBC regular Wayne Sleep. We're going to debate Gary Lineker next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A sex book available to 8-year-olds is now being published in the UK. It talks about oral sex, it talks about anal sex, scissoring, whatever that is. I'll have to sell that one to Mrs. Dolan when I get home. But the bottom line is it's not appropriate. A strong reaction on email. Hi, Mark, says Patricia. The book you've described makes Lady Chatterley's lover look tame in comparison, and that was banned. How about this? Well done, Mark, says Marianne. You speak for every responsible adult. What is this world coming to? We'll get to such a busy hour to come. It's time for the big question right now. And ex-footballer and Match of the Day presenter Gary Lineker has talked about the shocking levels of abuse abuse that he receives for expressing his political opinion. Speaking to the Guardian newspaper, he said the levels of attack are extraordinary, but that he'll not back down and will continue to speak his mind. In the interview, he revealed that he's received threats after retweeting and later deleting a post on social media calling for Israel to be banned from international sporting events, including football. In the past, Lineker has been criticised for describing the Rwanda policy as redolent of 1930s Germany, in a clear reference to Nazism, and for failing to directly and overtly condemn the October the 7th attack on Israel. But isn't Gary Lineker, like everyone else, entitled to free speech, entitled to speak for the many thousands of people dying or being injured in Gaza? Is the BBC star being victimised simply for having an opinion? Well, we'll bring my pundits in a moment, but first let's speak to a major star who's appeared on the BBC many times, legendary dancer and entertainer Wayne Sleep. Wayne, lovely to have you.
How are you? Thank you.
Do you think that Lineker is being treated harshly here for having a political opinion?
No, I think if you put yourself out there and you make a statement as strong as that, you should expect whatever gets thrown back at you. I don't think you should be wimpish and just hide in a corner and say it's not fair. You should. Anybody who says something like that is inviting criticism on one side or another. So I would have thought he was used to it.
Do you think there's too much vitriol pointed in his direction?
I think that, in a way, I would agree with somebody saying, shut up, because he seems to think he knows what to do. But, of course, none of us do, really, about this situation. It's very complicated. And just to say one thing and boycott everything, when I was with the Royal Ballet, we were told to go and be peacemakers, you know, in the arts. And we all had a political opinion, but we certainly wouldn't raise it in an embassy in the province we were in. We were sent to, like, maybe calm things down, and the arts should transcend all that. And I think sport should transcend anything like that. But if it is necessary and it's a threat that is so obviously one person on the wrong side, but, you know, there are wrong sides all around here.
Most definitely.
And he's only taken one side. He hasn't even mentioned the other side.
Now, of course, if he worked for ITV or GBNews or any other private outlet, he'd be entitled to his opinion. I'm paid to have an opinion, Wayne. But is it a problem that he's so outspoken as an employee of the BBC, as the face of the channel, particularly their sports output?
Well, he's been warned off a couple of times, you know.
Do you think the BBC are being tough enough on him? Are they being strict enough with him?
Well, he didn't say it on the BBC, you see. He said it in an Instagram or a post. And the thing with that is you should be allowed your own opinion. This country's freedom of speech, and he should be allowed to do it. But I don't like him reneging after it and trying to withdraw something that he's posted. You can't. As soon as it's posted, it's out there. And you just have to go with it. You can't suddenly think, oh, well, maybe I was a bit strong. I'll redo it tomorrow.
Yes, because, of course, he deleted the tweet that he retweeted.
Yes, and that's what he feels upset about. I think that's, you know, you have to stand on your ground, and that makes him weaker, I think.
Well, look, do stay in this conversation, because let's bring my pundits in, if we can, Wayne Sleep. Rebecca Jane is with us tonight, I'm delighted to say. We've also got Neil Wallace and Mike Green. Neil Wallace, do you think that Gary Lineker is treated harshly in the media and by the public just for having an opinion?
Gosh, no. That's just quite a funny idea, that. The truth about Gary Lineker, pardon me, is that he is virtue-signalling, attention-seeking, wrong-headed, know-nothing, spoilt, cynical, cosseted idiot.
Oh, dear.
He hasn't got a genuine principle in his head. What he's doing, he's hunting for clicks. That was very interesting, that incident this morning. There are so many own goals in it. He says that... you know, he says he shouldn't be persecuted for having an opinion. He says he crafts his tweets and his posts on Instagram thinking particularly about how he can use that huge following that he's got, that he can shift their opinions. He does it deliberately, in other words. He said this morning that he didn't understand what was happening in Gaza, implying that he didn't understand what the Israelis were doing. The big part of that is he doesn't understand this at all.
Yes.
And yet he feels entitled to comment. He is not entitled to comment. He is entitled to an opinion. Absolutely is entitled to his opinion. But the problem is he's riding that £1.4 million that he is paid by the BBC taxpayer, BBC licence fee payer, to leverage those opinions. That's why he has no right, when he's the star that he is, to say these things and hunt the headlines. And finally, the real thing that got me when I read that article was he was asked specifically, why do you comment constantly about the conditions of Gaza and what's happening to the people of Gaza, which is in many ways a terrible thing? And he's then asked, why haven't you ever commented on the October the 7th massacre, the kidnapping, the vile, vile things that happened then at the hands of Hamas? And he ignores it. He says, well, one atrocity doesn't mean other people can commit atrocities. He even passed the opportunity then not to condemn the horrors of October 7th. I don't believe for a moment that he's entitled to continue to talk about things, using our money on things in the real world he knows nothing about.
However, Rebecca Jane, he's got a track record about being concerned for refugees. I believe he's taken in at least one refugee since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He's worried about climate change and global warming, and he's concerned about the many women, children and old people that are dying in Gaza. What's the problem?
Yeah, well, what the problem is that he sat on his, multi-million pounds. Get me the smallest violin out in the world. He's crying about the abuse that he gets for ranting his opinions that have been built on public money to an audience that has been built on public money. It's ridiculous. If you want to be in politics, go into politics. Don't sit there, take all the money, think that you're going to get all the glory. And the biggest problem with Gary Lineker that I've got is the biggest problem with the majority of people actually on the left side of politics. They think their opinion's right and they're not interested in a conversation about anything else whatsoever. They ram it down your throat until you just shut up. So I'd really like Gary to shut up and move on.
OK, shut up and put it away. Mike Green, what do you think about Gary Lineker? Like you, Gary Lineker is an accomplished entrepreneur. He's got a company that makes hit podcasts. He's a pretty clever guy, isn't he?
Well, yes, and everyone does have the right to an opinion, but you're not going to hear any different opinion on this from me to Neil and Rebecca, because he is paid not to have an opinion on anything other than the sports side. He is paid to follow the BBC's impartiality rules. He never does that. They pay him more than most of their other talent, and yet he gets away with having an opinion that is often uninformed. He talks as if he's some kind of eco-warrior, man of the people, caring for everybody. Well, he didn't care when he was taking millions off of Qatar for the World Cup, a country that is anti-gay, a country that allows prejudice against women, a country that supports Hamas. So,
illegal
if
to be
you're going to have opinion, at least
illegal to be gay.
Sorry?
Illegal to be gay.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So if you're really going to be this passionate about people's rights, this passionate about looking after everyone, then at least live that, walk that talk, Gary, because you don't, and evidence says that you'll take where the money is, you'll go where the money is, and suddenly your morals drop. So I agree. He should put up, shut up, and stick to the impartiality rules that he is employed to stay within.
Well, I don't wish to participate in a pile-on, but I might add that he successfully sued HMRC to get his tax bill reduced by several £1 million.
Of course he did.
So much for socialism. But listen, last word goes to Wayne Sleep. Wayne, What are your conclusions? Actually, wait, can I be honest with you? Can I just have a little foxtrot or perhaps a tango?
Come on, then.
If only we had the cameras. No, what ultimately, final thought on
well,
this?
First of all...
He's just a human being. Why is everyone so horrible to him?
Because he thinks he has an opinion which puts the world to rights.
OK.
And he thinks he's thought it through, and he thinks he's come out with the absolute answer to everything every time he podcasts, every time he does a thing, and then he contradicts himself.
Does it rub you up the wrong way, Wayne?
Definitely. Well, what rubs me up the wrong way is just listening to that Qatar thing, and they're anti-gay totally, and he didn't mind going there. But I remember a time when he and a lot of footballers were anti-gay, and I remember meeting him in that period.
But of course, he wasn't anti-gay then.
Well,
is there evidence that he was anti-gay?
No, he was very polite. He was one of the politest. But I mean, the general opinion of being in football athletics was that a ballet dancer who's a male was a puff anyway, and that was the way they behaved. So. He's one of the old-fashioned ones, I suppose.
Well, listen, you've had the last laugh, Wayne. What a thrill to have you back in the studio.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. Looking princely as ever. Come back and see us on the panel very soon.
And I'm a rugby man myself.
Is that right?
Yeah, I used to be hooker in the scrum.
Why doesn't that surprise me? Be careful, Wayne. It's a family show. We've all had a drink. The brilliant Wayne Sleep. OK,
Thank
folks,
you
there's
so
so much to get through in just half an hour's time. I'll be dealing with the wayward Windsor, Prince Harry, who hasn't just lost a court case, he's lost the plot. That's at 10. But next up, what's going on at UKIP? Their deputy leader has sensationally and unexpectedly stepped down. That's Rebecca Jane. She's my top pundit tonight. What's happening at this important party? We'll get the answer to that shortly. Plus, in a Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, we've been asking, as Gary Lineker tells The Guardian he's been the victim of serious online threats, is the BBC star being treated unfairly just for having an opinion? The results are in. I shall reveal all next. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Now, before the break, I asked, as Gary Lineker tells The Guardian he's been the victim of serious online threats, is the BBC star being treated unfairly just for having an opinion? Well, the results are in. Do your worst, Alistair. There you go. 86.8% say no, he's not being treated unfairly. 13.2% say yes. Richard's not pulling his punches. Gary Lineker's boring and pathetic, endlessly searching for approval from the virtue-signalling woke elite, but crying when real people say he is a plonker. Nothing beats your emails. Now, last Sunday, in an exclusive, the chairman of the UK Independence Party, UKIP, Ben Walker, announced that their leader, Neil Hamilton, will be standing down, with a new leader to be announced in a couple of months' time. The new position is open to all. All you've got to do is sign up for membership and you can run for the top job. Here is the chairman talking to me on Sunday.
Whereas before, historically, it would have been, oh, you have to have been a party member for 3 years. That's not the case this time. It's open to absolutely anybody.
So anybody watching or listening to this show can become UKIP leader if their case is strong enough?
Absolutely. All they've got to do is join up, satisfy the criteria, which is quite small, and then they're in the mix. They're in the running to become leader.
OK, fascinating stuff. Well, I'm delighted to say one or two high-profile names have already thrown their hats into the ring, and they'll be joining me on the show in the weeks ahead. However, the fearless political broadcaster and commentator Rebecca Jane, who is my top pundit tonight, is sensationally standing down as deputy leader, and she's with me now. Rebecca Jane, what's going on? You did a brilliant job. You brought articulacy to the job. You brought profile and, of course, stunning good looks. Why are you going?
Oh, gosh, there's a whole load of reasons. I think my disillusion with politics has never been lower. I started with such passion and optimism and eternal hope, and I leave with, well, none of that.
And you joined UKIP and you took that job because you wanted to break up the political establishment.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that the whole uniting centre-right was the one thing I desperately wanted to do. And I very much realise it is completely and utterly impossible. And if there's one thing that I have wanted people to do, it's that when I say something, I want them to believe me. And it's not right for me to carry on trying to unite centre-right when I absolutely know it's impossible for a lot of reasons. One of them is that the party's not interested. They all sit around saying that they are, but actually it's not true. The other one is that UKIP doesn't have the resources to actually make this job easy for me. So I have no choice but to stand down because it wouldn't be authentic for me to stay.
Well, you've reached out to the likes of Richard Tice, who's a good friend of mine, a big star on this channel, but he hasn't engaged, has he?
Do you know what? I will be completely honest. So obviously Nigel Farage is part of Reform.
Yep.
Richard,
President,
founder. Yes, Richard completely ignored the whole thing. Nigel did respond, and the words have never really left me that Nigel thought that he couldn't unite with UKIP because the brand is too broken. And I actually think that there's some truth in that.
OK, so what is the future for UKIP? Is your departure the death knell, do you think?
I hope not. I hope that somebody does come in, and I've had conversations with new potential leaders who are throwing their hat into this, and I really do hope that somebody comes in and can really throw it up in the air and do something about it. But and again, it's about being authentic. Do I think somebody can do that? No. And I think if I was going to stay and be leader, I'd be changing up the party structure. I wouldn't be operating as a political party. I'd be operating as an activist party. And it's not the right thing for them.
You're not without influence. Where does your support go next? You're backing Rishi now?
Can you imagine?
You're backing my mate Rishi?
Can you imagine that? Absolutely not.
He's halved inflation.
Again,
he's stopping the boats.
Oh, knock it off, Mark. Oh, goodness. Do you know what?
Is it reform, though? Would you go to bed with reform
Everybody
now?
keeps on saying that. I can't imagine that happening. And I think Richard Tice is probably sat somewhere popping a champagne cork right now. But no, even when I ask myself right now, where do I align to, it's still UKIP. They just don't have the resources.
OK, and what about Neil? He's leaving after a good few years in the job. Your appraisal of his performance, Neil Hamilton?
I adore Neil. I think he's like a political father that I didn't have. I really do like him. It's the right time for him to go.
Well, I think it's a great loss to UKIP to lose Neil and to lose you, but it means we'll be seeing more broadcasting from you, and I guess more campaigning now and less politics.
Yeah, I can be independent now. Not, I won't say the next word.
Well, I think you should, because there are no holds barred here, but I think it will be a very four-letter one. Listen, Rebecca Jane, more power to you. She's back at 10 to react to my take at 10, because Prince Harry, the wayward Windsor, hasn't just lost a court case, he's lost the plot. I'll be dealing with Harry at 10. But next up, in a world exclusive, my Mark Meets guest is one of the survivors of the 1972 Uruguay plane crash in the Andes, where they resorted to cannibalism to stay alive. It's now a hit movie. That's next.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In 15 minutes' time, I'll be dealing with the wayward Windsor Prince Harry in my Take at 10. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. But first, Mark meets. And tonight, one of the biggest movies of the year, having taken Netflix by storm, is Society of the Snow. It tells the true story of the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, which was transporting a rugby team to Chile. It faced problems and crashed into a remote glacier in the heart of the Andes mountain range. Of the 45 passengers on board, only 16 managed to survive. Trapped in one of the most inaccessible and inhospitable environments on the planet, their survival depended on critical decisions, and at one point, they were forced to resort to cannibalism to stay alive. Well, the film is winning rave reviews and was watched more than 50 million times in its first 11 days. And we're delighted to say that one of the survivors of the original plane crash in the Andes, Gustavo Zerbino, joins me now. Mr. Zerbino, a privilege to have you on the show. Tell us about your story of survival. How did you do it?
Hello, how are you? A pleasure to be with you. Our story is not a tragedy. We have a lot of a tragedy, and it's not a miracle. We have a lot of a miracle. It's a story of love, solidarity, friendship, and self-vocation. In the Andes, we need to build a caring society where the goods belong to the community. The rules appear and disappear for their own. The first rule was forbidden to play, and the only goal was to survive, not all the team. But if someone wants to know the real story, I invite them to see the movie The Society of Snow, because Director Bayona is a genius. He managed to ensure that the viewers of the film are inside of the plane when it crashed, buried by the avalanche, so that they feel and experience everything that we experience in the mountain, and understand that love is the greatest energy that exists, and see how we were able to pulverize the limit of that seemed impossible when you bravely overcome fears.
Yes. What mindset did you have to put yourself in order to make it out alive? How did you survive mentally?
First, for us, life continue, and I continue to travel all around the world, giving lectures in the 5 continents, at teamwork, adversity management, and traveling with my family. I learned that the cowards die every day, and the brave dies only one. I learned that possible things take a while, and that impossible things just a little longer. That in life, you have to get up only once time more that you fall, and never give up. I live life preparing for the worst, always hoping the best.
Well, listen, it worked. It worked very successfully. Tell me about your daily life now and the legacy of that accident. What impact has the crash had on your life?
Well, I am a happy person who is grateful every day for being alive with a great vocation of service. I give up every day and have 24 hours to do what I want. I have 4 sons, 2 daughters, and 3 grandchildren. I practice daily gratitude, and I'm grateful every day for the extraordinary family that I have, thanks to my friends who live in my heart.
Well, it's wonderful. It's so wonderful that you're here to tell the story. And your name is Gustavo, and one of your sons is Gustavo Jr., who I understand is with you. So I don't know if we're able to have a word with your son as well. Clearly, he wouldn't exist if it wasn't for your tale of survival. Gustavo, there you are. Nice to meet you. Just as handsome as your father. And you're a miracle, because you wouldn't be here if your father wasn't so smart and so brave.
That's right. I'm part of the miracle in that way. We are here thanks of my father and all the people that didn't came as well.
Indeed. Listen, what do you think of watching your dad in this movie, having his story being told to millions of people around the world? Your dad is famous now.
For me, he's always famous since I was born.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a story of my father, my family, my community. But it's a story also of the world. And it's a story for everyone, because we learn a lot of the human power and what we can do in extreme moments. So I'm proud of this.
This photo is for my mother and my father.
Gustavo. Oh, yes, go on, Gustavo.
This photo is for my mother and my father. Saw me after the crash for the first time. They were so happy to be in front of the son that they think they was died.
Yes. Well, it was an amazing moment to get you back together. Gustavo, can we talk about cannibalism? Did you have to eat the remains of the people who did not survive?
Well, for us it was a very difficult decision, but we need to choose to live or to die. And the only way to survive in a place that we have nothing to put energy inside was the body of our friends. So we need to discuss a lot until we realize that the only way to survive was to take this very strong decision, but what the best. Gracias, Jose. Thanks for this decision.
Yes.
We came back alive, and the families now have the reality that their sons are dead, but they were so great in the movie of Bayona to see the story of our friend who died, that they tell the story, that the way that we survived, and they support the idea. Nikolic died the avalanche, and he said that he, to his mother and his girlfriend, that he asked God from the bottom of his soul that this day never arrived, but this day arrived, and now we need to choose to live eating our friends. And if I die tomorrow, I am going to be happy to share with them my body. This is in a letter that Gustavo Nikolic said to her mother and her boyfriend's girlfriend. So it's very important that this decision, we face the world and the families, because we are very proud to choose to live and not to die.
Well, listen, it's the greatest privilege to meet you, Gustavo. I know that recently you were the president of the rugby union in Uruguay. I know you still love the sport. Have you been on an aeroplane since the crash?
Well, I travel all around the world, in the 5 continents, doing speeches and teamwork and business and adversity management. But I think that to fly in a plane is very, very safe. It's more safe than driving a car. So
well,
I love
Gustavo,
life, and I move
Gustavo,
anywhere.
I'm so proud of you. It's so brilliant that you survived to tell the story, and your fine son as well. I would urge everybody to watch Society of the Snow on Netflix. Thank you for joining us. Next up, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry. See you in 2.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's turning stormy over the next 24 hours or so. Storm Isha moving in from the Atlantic, bringing some heavy rain and strong and damaging gusts of wind across the UK. We can see it there later Sunday into Monday, tight isobars across the whole of the UK. Met obvious warnings in force. A wet and windy evening to come as well, as this band of rain slowly pushes its way eastwards, though starts to ease during the early hours. Rainfall totals, and combined with some snow melt as temperatures rise across western areas, could lead to some localised flooding issues, but generally for everyone, breezy conditions and high temperatures means a frost-free start to Sunday, but generally fairly cloudy. There'll be some brighter sunny spells, particularly across towards central southern southern parts of the UK and perhaps northeast Scotland. But then Storm Isha moves in, outbreaks of heavy rain pushing in to the north and the west of the UK. Winds picking up by the afternoon, gusts of 50, 60, locally 70 miles an hour could lead to some disruption. And then through Sunday evening, overnight into Monday, the band of rain pushes eastwards, which will be heavy, and then some really strong and gusty winds affects northern Scotland. Amber warnings out across many northern and western parts of the UK, perhaps southeast England also seeing some very strong winds. It stays blustery into Monday, further heavy showers, and then turning very wet and windy again as we move into Tuesday. See you soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight and your perfect Saturday night in. In my take at 10, why isn't Prince Harry by his father's side in hospital? Harry hasn't just lost a court case this week, he has lost the plot. I'll be dealing with the wayward Windsor in no uncertain terms in just 2 minutes' time. Also, is Donald Trump now unstoppable? We'll talk about his race to the White House. And as the Princess of Wales languishes in hospital, how worried should we be about the health of our future Queen? And should the remarkable Princess Anne step forward with a more senior role amid this royal staffing crisis? I'll be asking the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my top pundits. So, a packed show, lots to get through. I'll be dealing with Harry. That's right, the wayward prince, the prodigal prince himself, after the news headlines and Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Mark. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Good evening to you. Norfolk Police has referred itself to the independent watchdog after failing to respond to an emergency 999 call from a home where 4 bodies were subsequently found. The force says it was contacted by a man at 6 a.m. on Friday, but no officers were deployed. Around an hour later, police found the bodies of 2 young girls, a 45-year-old man and a 36-year-old woman, in a town near Norwich after responding to another call from a member of the public. They're understood to be from the same family. It's the second referral Norfolk Police has made to the IOPC since the deaths, after officers attended the same address last month as part of a missing person inquiry. A speech by the Shadow Foreign Secretary calling for a ceasefire in Gaza has been interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. David Lammy had to make a quick exit when an activist from the Free Palestine Coalition jumped onto the stage and called for him to condemn what she called genocide in Gaza. Several others disrupted the speech in London, verbally attacking Labour's stance on the conflict. And Mr Lammy went on to express his support for the creation of a Palestinian state when the war ends, and he called for a sustainable ceasefire. Nicola Sturgeon claims the COVID inquiry does have messages she sent and received during the pandemic. On Friday, the inquiry heard all of Ms Sturgeon's communication on WhatsApp had been erased. However, Scotland's former First Minister has today posted that the inquiry does have messages between her and those she communicated with through informal means at that time. Ms Sturgeon says she will answer direct questions openly when she gives evidence at the end of the month. Mail deliveries on Saturday could be scrapped in an effort to reform the postal service. The regulator Ofcom is looking into how Royal Mail can evolve to meet changing consumer needs. It posted losses of £319 million for the first half of this financial year. Ofcom will outline its options on Wednesday, but says it's ultimately for the government to implement any changes. Mouthwash, tea bags and sausages are among the supermarket staples that have been downsized because of so-called shrinkflation. The consumer watchdog Which says shoppers are often paying more for less as manufacturers look to cut costs. They found a Listerine mouthwash shrank by 100 millilitres, despite its price in Tesco going up by 52 pence. So shoppers would have had to pay 21% more for 17% less. Some varieties of PG Tips that used to contain 180 tea bags now at many supermarkets contain just 140. Heavy rain and winds of up to 80 miles an hour are set to batter parts of Britain tomorrow. A number of amber warnings for wind will be in place from Sunday night into Monday as Storm Isha threatens a risk to life and damage to buildings. Railway lines across Scotland will close early at around 7 p.m. tomorrow. East Midlands says it expects significant disruption on Sunday and Monday. Well, this is GB News. We're live across the UK on TV and on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. That's it for the moment. Now back to Mark.
Always a treat to have my pal Aaron Armstrong with me on a Saturday night. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Is Donald Trump now unstoppable? We'll talk about his race to the White House and what it means for you and me. Also, as the Princess of Wales languishes in hospital, how worried should we be about the health of our future Queen? And should the remarkable Princess Anne step forward with a more senior role amid this royal staffing crisis? I'll be asking the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. This evening, I'm delighted to welcome the former deputy leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, who's never shy of an opinion. We have the star of Channel 4's Secret Millionaire, top entrepreneur Mike Green, and former national newspaper editor, Fleet Street legend Neil Wallace. They'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros. A packed hour to come. Those papers are on the way, but first, my take at 10. These royals haven't got a great track record in the courts, have they? with disgraced Playboy Prince Andrew settling out of court with his young accuser Virginia Giuffre to the tune of millions. And now Prince Harry, the world's least happy millionaire, ending his libel action against the Mail on Sunday. It's a crushing blow for the wayward Windsor, who brought needless embarrassment to his family and in particular the King by suing a national newspaper in the first place. It's not the done thing for royals to sue the press, but when did that stop Harry, who sold his soul to the devil with books, TV shows and podcasts, denigrating not just his family, but his country? For Harry, if it pays the bills, all bets are off. I'm sorry, but it's my view that this young man has zero ethics. Whilst the Queen was battling ill health in her final days, she had to contend with the knowledge that her grandson's tell-all book was coming, and she could only fear the worst about the impact revelations in it would have on a family and a monarchy that she dedicated her life to. And this week, the release of royal author Robert Hardman's new book about the family reveals that late, great Queen Elizabeth II was deeply upset that the Sussexes chose her name of Lilibet for their daughter. As I pointed out at the time, that name was a sacred one for Elizabeth. It was her beloved Philip's pet name for his treasured wife and best friend. The name Lilibet was deeply intimate for the Queen, deeply personal. Daily Mail journalist Rebecca English revealed the Queen had told aides the following. She wrote that the Queen said, "I don't own the palaces, I don't own the paintings. The only thing I own is my name. And now they've taken that." Damning. Now, some would argue the choice of name was a tribute to Elizabeth, but I'd argue it's further proof from Harry and Meghan that they see their royal connections as the ultimate meal ticket. Why else have they hung on to their titles when they rail against the monarchy every 10 seconds? To give their child the nickname of the former Queen of the United Kingdom keeps the gravy train going for another generation. I believe that calling their child Lilibet was the theft of something private from the Queen. And it was for branding purposes, for status, and ultimately, that which I fear motivates the couple the most, commercial gain. Following his botched legal action against the Mail on Sunday, I think that we've discovered that Harry's greatest sin is not that he's greedy or selfish or self-indulgent, it's that he's a bit thick. This is a guy that needlessly imperiled the lives of former servicemen and women by proudly announcing how many Taliban he killed in his book. This is a guy who embarrassed media executives with his idea for TV shows, which made Alan Partridge look like a creative visionary. And now, in a fit of pique, he pursues an expensive and ill-advised libel case against one of the most established newspaper companies in the world. Then he pulls out. This embarrassing climb down will cost him £750,000, which raises the chilling prospect of a sequel to his book so that he can pay for it. Although if Spare 2 does come out, I'll be buying it because the first one proved to be an excellent doorstop. I'm beginning to wonder whether Harry has a heart as well. His sister-in-law is in hospital as we speak after a major operation. Catherine will be in for 2 weeks. Now, medics wouldn't keep you in for that long unless it was serious. Princess Kate's condition is such that William will be caring for her for many weeks when she gets home, and neither of them will likely perform public duties until after Easter. Meanwhile, the King himself heads off to hospital shortly for the treatment of an enlarged prostate. Why, therefore, isn't Harry here in the UK, comforting his sister-in-law, supporting his brother at a tough time, and, of course, taking care of his dear old dad, who isn't getting any younger? Harry could have flown here days ago. He loves clocking up the air miles anyway, and for him to jump on a private jet to the UK is the equivalent of you or me hopping on a train to Leeds or Liverpool. Do you remember his blink or you'll miss it appearance at the King's coronation? Any son worth his salt would have stuck around afterwards for a couple of pints and a sandwich with the family. But no, Harry rushed back to California faster than you can say US dollar. This whole sorry saga saddens me. The prodigal prince has lost his court case, lost his family and lost the plot. Your reaction, Mark at gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails shortly, but first, my top pundits tonight. Former Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane. Top entrepreneur, star of Channel 4's Secret Millionaire, Mike Green. And former Executive Editor of the News of the World, Fleet Street legend, Neil Wallace. Rebecca Jane, Prince Harry should be in the UK taking care of his family.
Yeah, he should be, but he's a selfish little twerp. You know, what more do we want to say about him? We give him far too much airtime as it is. Let him clear off into whatever country he wants to be in. He wants to live this private life and all the rest of it. Crack on, go there. But just shut up, and we don't want to hear any more about you, just like we don't want to hear about Gary Lineker either.
What about revelations in this book written by Robert Hardman that the Queen said that the only thing she owned was her name Lilibet, and that was taken from her?
I completely think that's exactly what they did. They wanted the credibility and the credence of naming their child after, you know, Queen Elizabeth II. So, absolutely, I think they did it on purpose. I think it was a ploy. Like everything else that they do, it's just designed to make money and to give themselves more platform that they don't really, well, deserve.
Mike Green, the Sussexes have made it very clear that they sought permission from the Queen before choosing the name Lilibet. And the bottom line is many people think that Harry and Meghan are treated very badly by the UK media, and that we have to understand that Harry's got his own duties at home in California, looking after his own family.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, look, we've all got families. Show me a perfect family. And there's lots of fallouts that happen with family. So let's try... You know, I'm not a big royal fan. I'm not a big Harry fan. But if I was trying to be balanced, because he's the royal that everyone loves to hate. Hell, he's even making Andrew look good, and that takes a lot of a lot of doing. So if I was trying to look at it in a balanced way, I had a father that was little more than a sperm donor. He was no good as a father. He was never there. I probably saw him in total 20 times in my life. If he was ill, I wouldn't feel connected enough to go and see him. I certainly wouldn't feel responsible. We've got to remember, Harry lost his mum at a very young age. His father wasn't exactly a doting dad, and in fact spent more of his time with Camilla, who he wasn't married to at the time. So, look, Harry's had some issues. There's no doubt about it. He is looking after his family in America. And we don't know that he won't come over. Charles isn't in hospital yet. I think what is wonderful is that Charles is highlighting the issue of prostate cancer or prostate enlargement and so on. That's a wonderful thing. But it's just easy to love Harry. He can't win. If he carried on with his legal case, he would be hated. If he drops it, he's hated. If he turned up and went to visit Charles, they would say he was just trying to get attention off of his father being in hospital. If he doesn't come, he's hated. So I really think he's the royal that can't win, that people love to hate. And I think we should all consider what it's like sometimes within families. It's not all roses and light, but he can't hide or just keep our family situations in the family like most of us could.
OK, a degree of sympathy for Harry from Mike Green. I don't think that will come in plentiful supply from you, Neil Wallace. Have I been too harsh on Harry, though? I mean, I've said he's thick. The bottom line is that he's got a military CV, and of course he founded the Brilliant Games, of course, which is very much about helping sort of injured ex-servicemen participate in sport, the Invictus Games. So many would argue he's more accomplished than I suggest.
No, not that many, to be honest, Mark. Not really. The truth, there is some truth in what you say. The Invictus Games is a wonderful thing. One of the truths that Harry has completely and very conveniently rewritten is when he first got together with Meghan, the British media as a whole fell completely in love with them. They were love-bombed. They were the new tomorrow. They were the fabulous foursome with Kate and William. They could not have had a more golden welcome. The royal wedding of him and Meghan was screened across the world. It was a fantastic and well-received event. What happened was it started to go wrong, as the story started to seep out about her behaviour of staff, about his behaviour to his family. And the truth of the matter is, this is a young man, not so young now, but he is a guy who had everything going for him, and his hubris, his willingness, his desperate desire to feel hard done to, fuelled by Meghan, has turned the large swathes of the country against them. Now, I think that was a record number of times to hear the word hate on one programme. I don't believe he's hated. I think, frankly, that he's quite disliked because he has simply become the nasty royal. He's become the guy who has earned his living out of basically pouring the hors d'oeuvre on his own family. And nobody is suggesting that he should come racing home. But you know what he could have done? He could have issued a statement saying, I'm worried about my father. Yes, we have our issues, but he was there for me on many occasions. Very difficult being a single dad. It was difficult having only one parent, but in these times I care for him and congratulate him on making the issue public. I've not always seen eye to eye with Catherine. I worry about her because plainly she has a serious illness. He could have issued an olive branch, is what I'm really saying. But you know what you've heard? Nothing. Absolutely zilch, because it doesn't suit him.
There you go. Well, listen, not pulling his punches, the brilliant former national newspaper editor Neil Wallace, plus entrepreneur Mike Green and political broadcaster and commentator Rebecca Jane. My pundits return for the papers at 10:30, but next up, is Donald Trump now unstoppable? And as the Princess of Wales, Catherine, languishes in hospital. How worried should we be about the health of our future Queen? We'll debate that with Kinsey Schofield, live from the States, next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big reaction to my take at 10. Prince Harry hasn't just lost a court case, he's lost the plot. But I've got a question for you. Is Prince Harry thick? Mark at gbnews.com. Julian says, Mark, it's been really apparent for some considerable time that Prince Harry's lift does not go to the top floor. He is many sandwiches short of a picnic. As a result, he's a real waste of space. Great programme, says Julian. Thank you, Julian. Marion says, hi, Mark, I'm sure his family, like me, don't want that idiot Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. She's not wanted in this country, neither is he. He's a traitor. He has no morals except money is his main love. However, Steve says Prince Harry is very smart, a lot smarter than you, Dolan. There you go. That's me told. Listen, it's all about opinions. What's yours? Mark at gbnews.com. And it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, great to have you on the show. We're going to talk about Princess Catherine and how worried we should be about her health. But first, is Donald Trump now unstoppable?
Realistically, Mark, I think the former president is unstoppable if we're looking at becoming the Republican nominee for president. But if 2020 has taught us anything, it was that there are no guarantees when it comes to an American presidential election. A source recently did tell Page Six that Trump's totally convinced he's on, the path to winning the presidency again. He's very upbeat. He's elated. He's already predicted a landslide in the entire country to aides and friends. He has support elsewhere. Former Prime Minister and friend to GB News, Boris Johnson, has endorsed Trump. He said that Trump might just be what the world needs right now, as long as Trump supports Ukraine and its war agenda. Meanwhile, Governor Ron DeSantis, he seems to see the writing on the wall. And according to the Daily Mail, is looking forward to 2028 when Trump supporters have promised to vote for him. So Daily Mail describing his team as beginning to build off-ramp from the 2024 campaign.
Indeed. Well, there you go. He seems to have what strategists call the Big Mo momentum. What about his legal problems? Could he be prevented from running by lawyers?
Well, I don't think that is the case. No, that's certainly what their ultimate objective is, but it does not seem to, they've even said in certain cases he would be able to pardon himself. So while he is wrapped up in a lot of legal woes, it does not seem to be slowing him down.
Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, someone that's definitely being slowed down is the Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin, Kinsey. He accidentally shot his director of photography while shooting a Western movie. What's the latest?
Right. So special prosecutors spent nearly a day and a half this week presenting their case to a New Mexico grand jury over the death of Helena Hutchins on the Rust set in 2021. It's hard to believe it was that long ago. And according to the New York Post, 2 of the witnesses spotted at the courthouse were former Rust crew members. One of the individuals was present when the gun went off, and the other had stormed off the set the day before the fatal incident due to safety concerns. Now, this testimony it resulted in Alec Baldwin, he's an actor in the film, he's a producer of the film, and like you said, he's the individual that was holding the gun at the time, being hit with a brand new grand jury indictment out of Santa Fe of 1 count of involuntary manslaughter involving negligent use of a firearm. Back in, I'm sure you'll remember this, it was April of 2023, New Mexico prosecutors dropped their initial involuntary manslaughter case against him, citing that they were informed the gun might have been modified before the shooting and malfunctioned. It was reported at the time Baldwin had been informed that the case against him was over. So you'll remember he took a public victory lap. In that case, I'd say that these new charges will likely be very upsetting to him and his family. He said at the time that he pulled back the hammer but not the trigger, and the gun fired. In the past, he's pleaded not guilty, so we expect him to do the same in this case. And in response to these new charges, his attorneys said, we look forward to our day in court.
Well, there you go. Could this big star go to jail? That would be quite the story. The clock's against us. Apologies, Kinsey. How worried should we be about Princess Catherine's health? She's going to be in hospital for 2 weeks, which is a long time, and she won't appear in public in a frontline royal role until after Easter.
Yes, in a statement released by Kensington Palace earlier this week, they were very clear in their request for us not to speculate. Catherine specifically asked that her personal medical information remain private. This is the same hospital that, took care of Prince Philip, Princess Margaret, and JFK. So it's a posh space. I'm not going to personally speculate on what's going on, but I do hope that she's comfortable and not going insane with all the downtime, as I'm certain that she would rather be at home with her babies.
Do you think we should see more of Princess Anne, who I've always considered the jewel in the crown of the family?
I mean, let's give this woman a break. She is the hardest working royal. I mean, analytically, she is the hardest working royal. She did recently get a bump and was added as a Counselor of State in the Counselor of State Act 2022. The king added both Princess Anne and Prince Edward. That's a list of individuals who can act for him if he's ill or abroad. But I do think that we should leave her as she is. She remains the hardest working member of the royal family. She has openly discussed not envying her brother's position. She's efficient in the way that she works.
James, can you give me some picture of Princess Anne? Because I cannot get enough of Princess Anne. I think she's my favourite royal. She's the closest that we'll ever get to Queen Elizabeth. She's sensible, she's modest, she's beautiful. I love Princess Anne. Here's my suggestion. I know she's hard-working, Kinsey, but why can't she get an upgrade and do the bigger gigs? Enough of the garden fetes and the hospital wings. She should be on the front line. How about this for a title? Deputy Queen.
Oh, I don't know how Camilla would feel about that. Pray for Camilla. Thoughts and prayers.
There you go. But I mean, honestly, Anne is majestic, isn't she?
She is. She's wonderful, and she's very blunt, and she's a very honest person. And one of the queen in Hardman's book, which you've referenced today, the Queen would work with Charles in mentoring him about being king. She said it was important for there to be trust and stability, and we see both of those things immensely in the Princess Royal.
There you go. Well, listen, what do you think, folks? Princess Anne, Deputy Queen. Mark at gbnews.com. The Queen of Mark Dolan tonight is Kinsey Schofield. She returns in a week's time. Have a good one, Kinsey. We'll see you Saturday. The papers are next with full pundit reaction. Don't go anywhere. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
OK, folks, well, listen, some serious drama has kicked off at UKIP. One of my pundits tonight is the former deputy leader. She's only just resigned. Breaking news, she's just been unfollowed on Twitter and all social media channels by UKIP. Now, I've got a statement from the chairman, so it's all kicked off. I'll bring you the latest on that drama in just a moment. But first, we've got tomorrow's papers. Rebecca James, she just attracts trouble. OK, the weekend public verdict on Rwanda. PM's plan won't work or win power for Tories, a poll says. Only 1 in 5 voters think that Rishi Sunak will ever send asylum seekers to Rwanda. 23% believe the policy will deter the small boat crossings. 50% disagree. Make wealthy people pay more so the licence fee is free to people on benefits, says the former top boss at the BBC. The Observer now. Free our young from Brexit, work and travel ban, says Khan. Tax evasion law fails to lead to a single charge is the other story in the Observer. Sunday Telegraph now. Crackdown on activists in the civil service. Diversity networks reviewed in efficiency drive that could help fund tax cuts. The government will crack down on civil servants accused of wasting taxpayers' money on diversity activism and other overtly political projects. Net zero wind and solar advice based on a single year of data, say the Telegraph. Also, tragic story, 999 call ignored before girls' deaths. Also in the Sunday Telegraph, Paul's genocide claims demonise Israel, says the chief rabbi. Campaigners have hijacked the term genocide to demonise Israel in a moral inversion designed to tear open the still gaping wound of the Holocaust. Heseltine, the United Arab Emirates should not be allowed to buy the Telegraph newspaper. Sunday Express now. HS2 back on track. Secret government talks are being held next week to get the scrapped HS2 high-speed rail link back on track. A cross-party plan has been drawn up to complete the northern stretch of the line, ensuring the private sector foots most of the massive bill, not taxpayers. The blueprint will be discussed behind closed doors at a Whitehall meeting between Transport Secretary Mark Harper and the mayors representing cities at both ends of the route. Astonishing stuff. What a development. Private firms to pay bulk of bill, saving the taxpayer billions. HS2 back on track. Who knew? Things are looking up, folks. Sunday Mirror now. Harry's get well message to Kate and King. New Horizon outrage. Post chiefs partied as they fought victims. Post office chiefs were filmed enjoying a lavish company bash as it fought wrongly jailed sub-postmasters in court. Tonight there was fury at video footage of boss Paula Venables dancing and singing along to star guest Pixie Lott. And Daily Star Sunday, last but not least. The tourist star Jamie Dornan, big hairy caterpillar, tried to kill me. Hunk Jamie Dornan was rushed to hospital with a suspected heart attack after being stung by a giant caterpillar as he played golf on a boozy lads trip to Portugal. I've got to say, I've seen 50 Shades and I'm well aware of his caterpillar. We wish him well.
Nothing to do with
speedy recovery, thoughts and prayers. OK, folks, let's get full reaction to tomorrow's front pages with my brilliant pundits tonight. And we have calibre in the extreme. We have political commentator and pundit, the former deputy leader of UKIP, about 5 minutes ago. top entrepreneur, a self-made man, not born with a silver spoon in his mouth, made his own dough, paid a lot of tax. Star of The Secret Millionaire, Mike Green, thank you for joining us. And an absolute legend of journalism, former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. By the way, Neil Wallace, before we start the papers, am I the only one that misses the News of the World?
I do.
No. You're not.
I think it was okay. It was a pretty. It was a pretty. Went close to the edge in terms of what you can publish. But I thought it was always a cracking read, and I think it's been very boring since it went.
I think it's had a terrible effect on Fleet Street, and it's one of the great regrets of Rupert Murdoch that he went along with the panic and the fever of fear there was after the phone hacking scandal. You can understand it was a terrible time, but as a commodity, actually, it was terrific.
Most definitely. And then, of course, it turned out the Mirror Group appear to have been implicated in phone hacking now. It appears to have been right in the industry. Well, they initiated it even. So that's, a big concern. But there you go, the papers. The main reason why the Sunday papers aren't good is you're not editing them anymore, Neil.
Could be.
That would be it. Listen, what stories caught your eye? I'm quite interested in this story in the Express. It's rare to get good news, Neil. HS2 back on track, and this time the private sector pick up the bill. What do you think?
Well, the interesting thing about that is, of course, was that there was a big clamour for that at the very beginning. And there was always an issue of why is the taxpayer paying for this? Because private industry would have been very, very eager to be involved. And the truth of the matter is the state is not good at running major products. I'll give you an example. The Post Office and their Horizon computer system, you look at that, it goes all the way back to Tony Blair and the First Labour government wanted to completely restructure how the Post Office worked. They aimed too big, they aimed too wide, and they aimed too shot in the dark. And what happened 25 years later? We have this terrible situation.
And Blair didn't want to scrap Horizon when it was demonstrating major teething problems because he didn't want to fall out with the Japanese states. He wanted the bilateral relations with Tokyo to be on good terms. That's not how you make a decision, is it?
That's not how private industry makes a decision. And that's the significant thing. And, what you need to take away from it is that basic truth. Big government does not work because it just runs into the butters. It's just got too many fingers in the pie, too many voices giving opinions.
Is that why Margaret Thatcher had to privatise everything in the 80s?
She did it by taking control of it. She made the decision. She said we had to free up industry. I remember those days. I used to live in Manchester. It used to take something like 5 hours on a train, if not longer, if you could get one that worked, to come to London. Now, 2 hours? And that's a result of privatisation. Hasn't always worked. It's not a panacea. But the problem is, what is a absolutely given truth, you look at anything wrong by the government entirely, such as the military, sadly, you look at military budgeting, you look at the NHS, they don't work. Can I just say, however, what a cracking front page the Sunday Telegraph have got today. It is packed with top stories. Amongst them, things like this story, crackdown on activists in the civil service. Private industry would not allow that to happen because people are there to work, to earn their money and get on with it, not go and have little groups about whether or not we should have trans meetings every week.
Well, definitely, and the insult, the kicker is that we're paying for it. Mike Green, you've built a business empire. Do you think that HS2 is a good investment?
Well, as we were talking about that, and Neil was saying about the time it used to take, and, this whole thing, spending billions to save something like 12 minutes from Manchester to London, the cost versus the time saving is huge. But also, I was reminded when you say about Margaret Thatcher, famous for saying the lead is not for turning. Leaders make quick decisions and change them slowly. It seems that our government these days make decisions slowly, let the cost build up, let it go 3/4 of the way there, not working, say they're going to change it, and then, the public don't like it, really flim-flam, and then suddenly, we'll change our mind again. And house building is a classic example. I think last time, a few weeks ago, we were on, and, it was 1974, I think, when we last hit a housing target that the government of the time said they would hit. No government, it's not about Labour or Tory, no government has hit their housing target in like 50 years. And suddenly they're going to want us to believe that they're going to build 300,000 a year for the next 5 years. You got it right, Neil, when you say none of the government or the civil servants, the post office is a civil service business, really, are good at running business. No. They're not responsible with money.
They're not responsive either.
No, you're absolutely right. And the responsiveness, we know now, don't we, that Fujitsu knew about the size of these problems in 1999.
Yeah.
We're talking 25 years ago. And the post office were one of my clients in retail when I was working with lots of different retailers. And these post office sub-postmasters were being kicked out, were being arrested, were being berated. And at the time, I remember thinking there can't be any smoke without fire, because it was, you were led to believe it was definitely happened. It was infallible. The system can't be wrong. And yet all those people, I mean, people committing suicide. It's just so bad to think that went on. It didn't go on and was unknown. It was known that it was happening. They were covering it up. They were bullying people to keep it covered up.
Most definitely.
People should go to jail for this.
Well, they absolutely should. And the Sunday Mirror reporting that the chief of the post office, Paula Venables, was dancing to pop star Pixie Lott at expensive post office parties whilst they prosecuted innocent victims. Rebecca Jane, do you think that HS2 is a white elephant, or would you like to see it continue?
No, I'm not really fussed for it, if I'm honest. And you're talking to somebody that commutes from the north to London, obviously. It's there to save about an hour's worth of time. Is it really that significant? My issue is, you're talking about that it takes 2 hours now to get from the north down to London. That's not really true. So what usually happens is we're usually delayed, or the train is cancelled. And my train today was 3 hours and 40 minutes. So actually, I much prefer if they invest the money into sorting out the railways, and then they can go back onto their little vanity project and, you know, save themselves an extra half an hour in bed.
OK, listen, bit of drama for you.
Yeah,
You've just ceased to be the deputy leader of the UK Independence Party, which is one of the very established brands in politics in this country. Something's happened since you gave an interview to me just half an hour ago. What's happened?
I know. I have been unfollowed on Twitter, removed from the WhatsApp groups, removed from the Facebook groups, and let's see how many blockings I've probably got from higher up. Loads of fun and games, but yes, I don't think that they liked our interview.
Except you just shot from the hip. Well, listen, I'm a big fan of Ben Walker, who is the chairman of UKIP, and he has sent me this message in response to the news that you've moved on. And he said, Rebecca has been a brilliant asset to the party and assisted massively in our quest to unite the right. Personally, I will be forever grateful for her sacrifice to the cause and the work she has played. She's played an instrumental part in building the foundations of renewed political movement in British politics. She's an exerting force with so much to give, and I wish her luck with every forthcoming challenge. I'm glad that her heart will always be aligned with UKIP, the People's Army. Your response to that?
Ben's a great guy. Neil's a great guy. I think it's a very sad situation, but I don't think that they get enough credit.
There you go. Listen, folks, all that political drama, well, there's more to come because we've got more front pages for you. Plus, my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Plus, folks, we've got the results of another text poll and many other tidbits along the way. So don't go anywhere, folks. It is a very, very busy last part of the show. See you in 2.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, folks, well, I've got more front pages for you. Let's have a look at the Sunday Times and the legacy of vaccination scares. A third of under-16s at risk of measles. Nearly a third of under-16s are vulnerable to measles because they're not fully vaccinated. New figures reveal. In the land of the car, cheaper petrol could make Trump king, says Louise Callahan in the United States. And we were sent death threats after prayer ban, says the head teacher, Catherine Burble Singh. Sun on Sunday, Harry's speech blasted. Royal experts attack him for not mentioning Charles or Kate when presented with an aviation trophy. And TV Christine gets tough. Paddy McGuinness to face pitbull divorce lawyer, which could cost him many millions of pounds. Oh dear, that's a bad old headline to wake up to, isn't it, for Paddy McGuinness? Can I just say the legacy of vaccination scares, a third of under-16s at risk of measles. Now, it's very important that people receive their immunisations. My kids were given the MMR and all the rest of it. It's a real worry when they don't get vaccinated. But does it surprise anyone with those illiberal vaccine mandates during the pandemic when people were not given the choice to have the jab or not, given the fact that it didn't stop you getting COVID, didn't stop transmission? There was no moral case for those mandates, and that's why you've got your vaccine hesitancy. You make your bed, you lie in it. That's just my view, of course, but there you go. Rebecca Jane nodding her head. The government are very clear that the vaccines saved countless lives. OK, folks, look, we've got those front pages, and we're getting reaction from the brilliant political broadcaster and commentator Rebecca Jane, top entrepreneur Mike Green, and former executive editor of the News of the World, Fleet Street legend Neil Wallace. Before we get to your headline heroes and back page zeros, parallel parking is rather tricky, especially if your vehicle is a Royal Navy mine hunter vessel. 2 British Royal Navy ships were involved in a collision in a port in Bahrain today, and the scenes were quite remarkable. Perhaps the parking sensors stopped working, or maybe the rear view mirror was obscure, but check this out. Talk about you've been framed. Jeremy Beadle, eat your heart out. Now, I'm delighted to say no one was injured in the accident, but I'm sure there'll be questions of those on board HMS Chiddingfold and HMS Bangor. One bangored into the other, didn't it? What a shambles! OK, folks, it's time now for our headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Rebecca Jane, who's your headline hero?
Maggie Oliver. Because she's phenomenal, and the work that she has done in raising all the awareness of, obviously, of sexual abuse and trafficking and gangs and all the rest of it.
And the grooming gangs.
And the grooming gangs, yeah, gangs, obviously.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. What more can we say about her?
A true heroine. How about you, Mike Green, your headline hero?
Yeah, mine is Alan Bates, the sub-postmaster that didn't give up. A real David and Goliath battle there. The post office was one of the UK's biggest brands, favourite brands, trusted brands, and the pressure, the relentless pressure that must have been on him to just give up. The number of times he would have thought, what's in this for me? 20 years of battling for postmasters. That man should get a knighthood, should be recognised, rewarded.
He turned down an honour.
He turned it down because Paula Doodah had hers, but now she's giving it back. Hopefully he'll accept.
Yeah, he deserves it. She does.
Mike, you've built many successful businesses. What happened in the culture at the post office where they were so corrupt and so cruel? How can a business behave like that?
Do you know, I think some businesses get to a point, and I remember we were doing some studies around the strength of their brand, and they were looking at rebranding and how they should go the brand and so on. And there was a real belief that, like, they were at the top of the tree and everybody loves the post office, even though people were falling out of love with it because of strikes, it was getting slower.
And it was losing money.
All of those things. But still, there was an arrogance and ego that everyone's wrong, you know, the peasants are revolting kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that like some big companies, they think they become untouchable. They think that everyone else just doesn't get it. It's kind of emperor's clothes syndrome, that if only you could see it like we see it, you'd understand. And I think once a company gets to that point of believing they're untouchable, and they're protected by government, they're protected by taxpayers' funds and support and so on.
Rebecca Jane, you're nodding your head at that.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's all about ego, it's all about control, it's all about them thinking that they're invincible. It's exactly what the Conservatives do today. They sit there thinking that they're absolutely brilliant and everybody else is just wrong and gaslight.
Well, they're about to find out the opposite is the case, I suspect. How about you, Neil, your headline hero of the day?
Mr. Justice Nicklin.
What's he done?
He's the gentleman.
Did he let you off a speeding fine?
No. I wish he had, actually. I got banned about 6 months ago.
You're so rock and roll.
He's the guy who told Prince Harry, you have to go to court to prove your case against the Mail on Sunday. Prince Harry, because of that ruling, got cold feet this week and backed off because that judge had the courage to say, no, prove it. And the result is Prince Harry has got a £750,000 bill. As you say, he'll probably have to write spare.
Probably will. That's a good title. Rebecca, we've only got a few seconds now. You're back page zero if you can. Can you remember who it is?
Yeah, I forget his name.
It's not no one at UKIP, is it?
No. Oh, no, we should have changed it, shouldn't we? Anyway, I forget his name. I was on GB News earlier on this week with him. I was telling he's an MP, James Sunderland.
Oh, yeah.
I told him about my very real lived experience last week of being in A&E and how we can't see doctors and all the rest of it. And he sat there and went, what an odd narrative. The NHS is at record spending. Gaslit me on national TV.
Not having it. No one does that to RJ.
No.
OK, Mike, briefly, your zero of the day, please.
Mine is Rishi Sunak for the hollow victory that he thinks is a win over the Rwanda victory. And also for all of those MPs who played up that they were going to go against him, and they were always intent to fold like limp lettuce leaves when it came to the third vote. It was just weak. And if they think that's got them any grace at the next election, they really need to get their game together.
Well, harsh words. Neil Wallace, can you give me 10 seconds? You're back page zero.
Prince Harry. Not least because this was a huge victory for press freedom and freedom of expression. And believe it or not, in these days, these things really matter.
As has been demonstrated by brilliant pundits tonight. Thank you to James and the team the other side of the glass. And my pundits, you for your company. Headliners is next, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9 for Mark Dolan tonight. Take care.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of Weather.
on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's turning stormy over the next 24 hours or so. Storm Isha moving in from the Atlantic, bringing some heavy rain and strong and damaging gusts of wind across the UK. We can see it there later Sunday into Monday, high isobars across the whole of the UK. Met obvious warnings in force. A wet and windy evening to come as well as this band of rain slowly pushes its way eastwards, though starts to ease during the early hours. Rainfall totals combined with some snow melt as temperatures rise across western areas